Thank you, Patricia. And now we're going to hear from south of the equator, from Israel Ran. Are you here, Israel? There you are. Oh, you're from Israel, but I thought you were in Argentina too.
My wife is from Argentina.
Oh.
Richard came 2 years ago to our wedding.
So
there's a connection.
you'll state it.
Hello, my name is Israeli, and like my name, I'm from Israel. Most of you know Richard as a psychologist, as a musician. I know him simply as Richard, my friend. I met him when I moved here with my wife from Vancouver 5 years ago, and it was love at first sight. I am myself a neuroscientist, and I never got actually to talk to Richard ever about neuropsychoanalysis, one of his new passions. So I made myself a commitment that it's very unfortunate now that he's gone that I'm actually going to read a lot and actually inform myself a great deal. So what I wrote here is actually a letter to Richard. I've been thinking about him a lot ever since it happened. It so happens that he actually he gave us a ride to the airport just 3 days before he died. And this is a letter to him. It's just one of the thoughts that has come to my mind, and I was thinking of maybe imagining that I would, he's somewhere there listening to us. So here it is. Richard, my friend, you did it again, always full of surprises. Like the way you abruptly showed up in the middle of my wedding with your saxophone, just in time for a famous duet. But this time, you tricked me. We were supposed to practice some Brazilian tunes, and I was just about to email you the names of these tunes. So you can understand that it is difficult for me to let it slide. I'm asking myself, who am I going to call now when I need advice? Who am I going to share moments like the famous ginger beef story? It is a famous, very funny story we had all together in Chinatown here. A Brazilian fest, or watching the World Cup at Champs, not before going for smoked meat at our favorite place, not Schwartz's, just the one across the street that without the lineup. That was just as good. Now that you're gone, I would have to guess what types of jokes you would make, or else life would just be too lame. Before I met you, I used to watch sitcoms like one of your favorites, Seinfeld. And back then, I never realized that one day I would live in a sitcom where both of us are actually major players, major characters. I'm not sure where you are right now. Wherever you may be, I hope there's a band with all the instruments for a good jam. Also, I hope that you get all the time you need to do your favorite things, like psychoanalysis, like playing jazz again, and like going to that place just across the street from Schwartz's. I will keep checking on you from time to time, and most importantly, I will never forget how you taught me to change any tragic moment into comedy. So, I promise to find the 3 tunes you asked me to look for, and I also promise to keep your sense of humor alive, a la Karmel. It is time for me to finish what I have to say, and I could not find a better way to join the 2 Hebrew words for bidding a friend farewell. Shalom, chaver.
Thank you, Israeli. And Audrey Wise, I think.
Good evening. I'd like to thank all of you for coming. I'd like to express my sympathy to Richard's family, friends, and colleagues. Music, movies, and quiet study. That was one way to describe Richard. What I liked most about Richard was the movie nights that he'd organize. I attended them for years. After each movie, he would organize a lively and provocative discussion. The audience drew people from all walks of life, and certainly after each movie and each discussion, we had something to think about. In the course of his life, he helped thousands of people, whether patients, students, colleagues, or friends. Richard, I will miss you.
Arlene Dover, okay. Kaplan, sorry.
I'm just coming to terms with the fact that I'm probably the oldest intern here. I met Richard in May of 1984 as I began my first practicum here at the Montreal General as a doctoral student in McGill's clinical psych program. In our assessment tutorials, I was one of, I'm sure, the very few students that understood what the hell he was talking about. And by September, we were friends. Richard and I shared many interests and passions, the love of music, the love of Israel, of family, and of life. Richard was the most present friend. He was present at all the milestones of my life since we met. At the birth of my second and third children in 1985 and 1990, at the Brit Milah of my son in 1990, at my PhD party in the fall of 1992, and throughout the period when my marriage ended in 1995 to 96. He was not only present at the bat mitzvah of my second daughter, Cecily, in 1997, he organized the musicians for the occasion and played his sax with them. We were truly honored. During the 90s, Richard helped me organize an evening of jazz at St. George's High School as a fundraising event. John LaBelle and Dave Turner played, and it was a huge success. Richard was present throughout my professional training. He was a brilliant and generous supervisor. He was a stimulating and constant colleague. During my training, he offered me learning opportunities well beyond the scope of his mandate. He advised me and encouraged my evolution as an independent clinician. He offered me counsel and respected my decisions when they were different from his opinion. He was a true teacher. Richard followed the musical progress of all of my children, accompanying my eldest daughter, Harley, when she was 4 or 5 on the violin with his clarinet or sax, and attending many of her Suzuki concerts. More recently, he's been talking with Levi, who's now 20, about musicians that they both know, and advising him on his imminent choice of a university music program. Richard took an avid interest in my 3 children's education, their development, and their passions. And he was the same with me. Following the growth of my mania for dancing salsa, and more recently my passion for tango, over the past few years, he accompanied me to milongas and began to involve himself in the complexity and emotion of tango music, meeting musicians, and composing his own tangos. Richard followed my life and my loves closely, creating relationships with many of my closest friends, accepting my choices and accompanying me on my adventurous relationship journeys. Over the years, he's shared many of the people that he's known and loved with me. And in these ways, Richard was a precious friend who really enriched my life. I'm going to miss Richard's presence at our family occasions and at my dinner parties and brunches, which he really loved. He loved my food. He loved the house, my kids, and my dog. He knew me and he knew my life. I'll miss his attentive ear, his thoughtful gifts, his curiosity, his creativity, his insight and kindness, and his compassion. I'll miss his music and his humor, his enthusiasm, and his fantastically idiosyncratic way of expressing himself. I'll miss the way he scrunched up his nose and opened his eyes and so on and so forth. I feel so fortunate to have had him in my life for these past 27 years, and even though he'll be absent physically, I'll cherish his friendship forever.